Buongiorno a tutti. Welcome everybody. And I think it's better if you do it in English. Yeah. Right? Okay. Everybody can understand it in English?
Yeah.
If there's something you can't, raise your hand and we try to translate it in Italian. We translate it in Italian, no, we try.
Thank you.
Welcome to this first laboratorio del gusto, this first tasting in Wiki Planet Madre Giovani. I'm very happy to be here and to speak of beer because Italian beer, the movement of Italian craft beer is one of the strongest movements that regarding beers all over the world. You know that starting from the 90s all over the world, the beer started growing. We had standardization of the world of beer after the 50s, in which the big industries, the production of lagers mainly, invade, I would say, all the world with lager, very clear, with no taste, or moreover no taste, with raw materials that you don't know where they come from, with use of other ingredients than the real ingredients of beer are water, malt, hops, and yeast, even if yeast is not properly an ingredient, even and is the most important ingredient of beer. So it has these two situations. It is the most important ingredient, and we will see how even tasting the beer of Pietro. So they try to destroy. They destroy long history. Beer is probably the oldest products that man produced on the earth. And the reason why the man started producing beer was really simple. It was a way to stock barley for a longer time than keep it there, and it was alcoholic. So it was something that was good for making whatever rituals they need. So for speaking of beer today, I couldn't be alone, because it's impossible, in my opinion, to talk about a product without having somebody that produces the product, somebody that knows very well what the product is, how the product is done. And so when I was thinking to who could be the person to bring here to speak to you of what is beer and why the movement of beer in Italy has been so important in the last 19 years, I thought to Pietro Fontana. Pietro Fontana is the brewer of a small brewery here close to Milan, in Monza. The name of the brewery is Carobiolo. And what is good of Pietro is not only that his beers are great, and you will have a taste later, but that he has a very long history in Italian craft beer history that started long before the beginning of the movement. So I would just pass my microphone to Pietro to present himself, to present the brewery, and then we go a little deeper in what happened from 1996 in Italy, and then for sure we taste the beers.
No, my English is not so good, so I will try to speak in English, and then Eugenia. Okay. Going on when I will stop. Okay. In 1996 I was not a brewer, and I was only a collector of bottles. I like to taste beer, but blindness, okay, with no internet and with not time for studying beers. And so I bought a lot of bottles, and I test them only with the only purpose to collect. Okay, no interest in degustation, tasting, and in production.
You were interested in the labels.
Labels and bottles, okay, because not only labels. And my room was full of thousands of bottles, different bottles from all over the world. And in 1996, an Italian law, new law, introduced the possibility to brew at home, just for yourself, okay, not to sell. And that was a great point for the new age of Italian beers, okay? Because 5 or 6 microbrewery born was born in that year, and I went to them just for the bottles. And then I discovered the first Italian brewer for me, okay, because there were only the big brewer, okay, the multinational, okay, and so I met physically the brewers, and then I tasted the beers, and there are a lot of courses, a lot of lessons, okay, to understand why the beers were different, and I were there, and I learned what was the meaning of the first Italian brewers about their beers. In the beginning, all Italian beers were more or less standard. Okay, the principal, the first purpose was to produce beer in independent brewery, and that was the war. Okay, that was the reason. The reason was just okay. The important thing is to make our beers ourselves. Okay, and the model was the brew pub. So with a brewery with inside a tap room or a pub, okay, to sell beer fresh and without bottles, without traveling and so on.
What Pietro is telling is really important because is very interesting what happened in that moment. You have to imagine nothing before 1986. 1986, 7 breweries, 1 in Lazio and 6 in north of Italy. In the same moment, and all these breweries were brew pub, as Pietro said. So you produce beer and you sell beer in another room. And this was a very simple way to check what a person that comes to drink beer think of your beer. It was a good way to make money, very, very simply, because you do not have to have something that distributes your beer, that sell your beer for you, that increase the cost of the beer. And the third point that is quite linked to the first that I said, and I think that Pietro, you can tell us what is happening to you now in the new brewery, is that these brewers could explain to people that come to drinking beer why their beer was so different. Because Italy is not a beer land, it's a wine land. People in Italy, the majority of people in Italy thinks that beer is something nice for summer, but after summer not so much. Incredible with pizza, to be drink very, very cold, and has to be fizzy. No way. So when they enter for the first time, for example, in Baden, just to say one of the biggest Italian brewery now, Italian microbrewery now, and one of the first, and Teo Musso, that was the brewer, served them Super, for example, that is a strong ale, very alcoholic, with a strong flavor. In that period, probably stronger than now. People say, okay, it's good, but probably this is not beer. And this was the situation that the brewers has to fight with. So 1996, this was the situation, just to let you know, and then I make Pietro going on in his history. Nowadays, in Italy, we have 1,000 breweries. Is not correct to say 1,000 because 1,000 are the number of breweries that open in these 19 years. Nowadays, 883 are the labels that produce craft beer, and in this huge number, because 883 is
Much more than Belgium.
much more than Belgium, that is a beer land. Okay, so I think that UK is probably with very small breweries is a little bit more, but not so much. You have three main categories of breweries in Italy. You have breweries, so in which there is a brewer, there is a production room in which the brewer produces its beer, and then he sells its beer. Then you have a category of breweries that are not breweries that are growing in the last years, that are called beer firm, beer firm, that are brewers without a production room. So they cannot produce, and they have to go to another brewery to produce the beer. So they have in mind the recipe many times not, but the majority, or the beer firm as it should be, is a brewer with an idea of beer that cannot produce because it does not have a production. And so he goes to a brewery and they ask them to produce their beer there. And then they sell it with their name. And then there is a third that in Italy has grown in the last 5 years, that is the agricole beer. So the beer with farming beers, farming breweries. So there is a farm that produces barley, in a few cases hops, but hops in Italy is something very small production. There is a guy that is trying to do something in Emilia Romagna now.